This is Choose the Bear, where we dive deep into the power and joy of living a vibrant, independent life on your own terms. This podcast is your go-to source for smart, fun, and insightful conversations about what it means to embrace independence and live the life you choose. I'm Kat Calvin, and together we'll explore how this movement is challenging outdated stereotypes, redefining success, and empowering people to live their best independent lives. Hello, all. Today is a really, really interesting interview. It is with a German activist, feminist, leader of the child-free movement, which is really surprisingly controversial in Germany, where she lives and works and is from. We talk a lot about German society and politics and the reactions to her as a woman who has come out as happily and loudly child-free, and a lot about politics. And we're seeing the same thing in Germany that we're seeing all over the world, where with the rightward political swing, we're also seeing a rightward social swing, right? Think trad wives and soft girl life and Project 2025 and all of the sort of things that mesh together as we're seeing a rightward turn. And we're seeing this all over the world. And it's something that the 4B movement is really hitting very hard against, and that governments are fighting, as we're seeing these huge drops in fertility, and then the different ways that governments are trying to combat that, which mostly involve just trying to get women to have more children and not, acknowledging a new way of life. And so hearing the German perspective of this was really interesting. Verena is really prolific. She's writing all of the time. She's very passionate. I just absolutely loved her and loved having this conversation. I learned a lot. I think it's interesting. I think as we're continuing to interview people from around the world, we're seeing so many similarities, but also just, vast differences in culture and how the child-free movement is hitting against norms. So I thought it was fascinating. I hope you enjoy it. And here it is. All right, everyone. Well, this has been an international podcast so far, and I am excited to continue that with a really incredible woman from a country that was actually home for me for a long time. My brother and I thought we were German forever. Then we were shocked when we moved to America. Verena Brunschweiger is a really incredible child-free activist and just sort of powerhouse of a person. And we are lucky to have her here today. So Verena, thank you for joining us. Hello.
Oh, hi there, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. Let's start, though, with just telling everyone, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm Verena Eleonora Brunschweiger. Perfect pronunciation, by the way. The way you said that. And I'm a child-free feminist, author, and activist. And I also teach part-time, and more about this later on, because it can be hard being a child-free teacher here in Germany. And basically, I like doing all this activism concerning the child-free movement or birth strike, or also promoting antinatalist philosophy for those who have no idea what's that. I can tell you more about that later on. And yeah, this is just somehow my mission. And they call me Germany's child-free icon. I'm quite proud of that. And I really enjoy doing it, despite all the hate mail I get. But that even keeps me motivated in a way.
Well, and so I read your book. It's the greatest title ever. Do child-free people have better sex? It's just a great title. And so we previously on this podcast had a guest, Teresa Sheckler, who wrote or made a documentary
I
on
know her.
my selfish life. And
Yeah.
in she interviews a woman who was a teacher in the 70s, and 60 Minutes did a feature on her, and about not wanting children, and they called her perverse, and she got fired from being a teacher, etc. And so and that to me, that I was like, yeah, that feels like the 70s. Like that would never happen in the States now. Nobody cares. Like, it would never happen. And then I was reading a book, and something very similar happened to you in 2019, which,
Mm-hmm.
yes, it was the year before COVID, so it was basically 12 centuries ago, but it really was so recent, and it really shocked me, um,
Mm-hmm.
because that is just the reaction to
Mm-hmm.
your child-free activism. It really feels very retro
Yeah,
for
it
for an
is.
American. So can you talk a little bit about what happened to you and why
Mm-hmm.
Germany had this reaction in 2019?
This is actually quite embarrassing, and I enjoy telling German journalists about how progressive the US or the UK, etc., in general are. Really, that's true. I experience this all the time. But okay, let's start with the beginning. When I came out with this book in 2019, yeah, everyone said, "Oh no, how can a teacher write such a horrible book? She must really hate kids, blah blah." And I said, "Wait, well, hang on. I didn't say anything about hating kids. I talk about the environment and about kids unborn, who are not kids anyway, about people who might start a family or maybe not. I talk about all those aspects, or feminist reasons, philosophical, political aspects. I'm not talking about getting rid of kids." And I was really disappointed and put off and angry and shocked and all of those emotions, because I thought, how can one really nastily misinterpret what I say and write? So that was a surprise even for me. I had expected that it wouldn't go down that way with everyone. Okay, one can expect that. But to such an extent, it really, I was so shocked that I had to request 1 year of unpaid leave to somehow recover. And then I changed the school and that was really a huge shock for me, because they didn't want me to go on teaching ethics, for instance. I have this philosophy/ethics exam, and I teach kids in that subject as well. And they said, "Oh no, as a child-free person, no, we don't want that." What's wrong with you guys? I really didn't get that, and yeah, it disappoints me even nowadays. This
Well,
is
and
some.
it was surprising to me because the reasons that you, and we'll talk a little bit more later about specifics, but the reason that you gave in that first and second book about not having children were really about ethics, and particularly about the environment. And so when I saw that it was ethics that you were teaching, I was like, well, this she's shown that actually she's gone through an ethical process, and that's something that she can teach kids. So it was even more shocking to me.
Oh, that's so nice and really soothing in a way to hear that, because here I get all this, as you call it, retro reactions. And really, it even gets worse because we have this right-wing backlash, and
Yeah.
we have misogynistic people all over the place who rule and now say it's a woman's only purpose to have kids. So I must be extremely off and wrong and whatever, crazy, etc., the witch to be burned, blah, blah. And so especially in the east of Germany, we had those elections. I guess the question concerning this later on about right-wing politics anyway. But yeah, this is really so creepy that it gives me goosebumps every time I think too much about that. And I'm so lucky and happy that you exist over there and show us that birth strike and child-free activism can peacefully coexist with other concepts. And yeah, I'm ashamed almost that in Germany this is not the case, not at all. For instance, I have a column now, my own column, and it's in Switzerland, because even they are more progressive than Germany. And yeah, and who would believe that? Yeah.
Now, well, and speaking of the turn towards right wing politics, we're seeing this globally. We're also seeing massive fertility rates globally, and Germany certainly is seeing the same thing. And we are very much seeing different reactions to the fertility rates among different countries. One thing that has been great, I've been saying over and over, and we're, for people listening, we're recording this a week before the US elections, so we have no idea whether we still have a democracy or not. But I've been saying that the greatest person for single and child-free women since Gloria Steinem is JD Vance, because here he came out and started talking about childless cat ladies, and really the backlash, the whole country really after him. And it was really wonderful to see that we're at a place here where everyone, even people on the right, are like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're talking about child-free women. It's ridiculous. It's 2024. And so, that was great. And yet we're seeing in Germany and other countries that that's very much not the case. And as we see, and who knows, as this publishes, we could be in the middle of our own very right-wing swing. But as we see these right-wing swings happening, what we see over and over and over again is that the far right constantly emphasizes childbirth and having as many children as possible. And we're seeing that come back. So can you talk a little bit, you talk about this in your book, and sort of far right increasing pronatal policies, about what that looks like in Germany? Because of course we're all watching a little terrified about the right wing in Germany, because we've seen this before, and how that connects to this really violent reaction that people have had against you and the child-free movement.
Again, I can't stop saying how ashamed and embarrassed really I am all the time, especially when I talk to journalists from the UK or the US, and they all say, well, we have had this in Germany before. And I say, I know. But so it's especially shocking, but we have so many indifferent people here as well, who are so ignorant, especially here in Bavaria. This is laid back and conservative, and everything is cool and smooth, and we have our own private life, and who cares? Oh, the right wing wins in the east of Germany. Oh, well, who cares? That's not really that big a deal.
Oh, God.
And so, and we see it in Russia. It was 1 week ago when Putin finally achieved his great law he wanted all along. Big hefty fines for child-free propaganda, as he calls it. So I would have to pay lots of money if I lived in Russia right now. Also my editor, because he publishes horrible books like that. We talked about that, and he also couldn't believe it. And this is real.
Yeah,
and
this podcast, our conversation, is now illegal in Russia.
Exactly. You would get a fine as well.
It's crazy.
Absolutely, I shouldn't laugh because it's so not funny, but somehow humor helps me to survive all this mentally. But yeah, and we have all those tendencies throughout Europe, even globally, as you just said. And we have Orban in Hungary or Meloni in Italy. And they are all anti-abortion, and they all want the native women to have as many kids as possible, because Putin, he puts it clearly anyway, and everybody should be able to see it right now. He has this war going on, and he wants to win the war, and he wants to feed those young men. Exactly. I'm really shocked and surprised that more people realize that. We had 3 small articles about this in our German press, and that was it. I thought everyone would write about that, and now finally realize what this is all about, this pronatalist right-wing, I was going to say shit, let's say stuff. I can't believe that people still don't grasp this. They think, oh, it's okay, and this is all my private decision, and nobody cares. But actually, they are doing patriarchy a favor. They are doing right-wing politicians and their party programs a big favor. And why have kids if they are sent off to war and slaughtered there? I wouldn't want that.
It's also, it is interesting that you talk about Bavaria, which is so gorgeous. It's my favorite part of Germany, but it's also where Munich is. And again, I think because as Americans, we're constantly reliving our history. Like we're very self-reflective, which I think a lot of people globally don't get, is that we are constantly thinking about what did we do and what did we do right now? Do we make the same mistakes over and over again? Yes, but we think about it, right? And so
I have a friend in Massachusetts, and we talked on the
Well,
stage.
yes, and
So I know that.
there's nothing I love more than a reenactment of a revolutionary battle because they always are followed by cake breakfast, and that's the best. But but we think about it all the time. And so for me, I was just in a couple of years ago. And everywhere you go, you're like, oh, this is the beer hall where Hitler became famous and made his speeches, et cetera. And it's that history surrounds you. And there was the same feeling around Germany of, oh, this is just happening in Bavaria. It's fine. And it wasn't that long ago, right? And so for me, we're seeing, and I could tell you in America, we're constantly talking about this rightward swing in Germany. We're paying attention. I got a news alerts yesterday about Japan and everything that's happening there, right? And like we're seeing it all over the world, but it just feels like, has there not been education in Germany about, because we got it, a lot of it. By the fourth grade, I think every American could draw a map of Germany, right? And so like of what's happened, because we see this happening. And I think these pronatal policies and the reactions that you have been having, there's such a canary in the coal mine for this problem. And it blows my mind that there isn't there aren't alarm bells ringing across Germany.
Yeah, I can't believe it either. But it's really a gender problem, and it's almost 99%, I'd say, of my haters are male. And those are misogynist. An equivalent in your country might be the Proud Boys and all those male Trump fans who are not that well educated. And of course, they have some kind of self-esteem problems, etc. So they want women in their place. But there are so many of them, which is what makes it dangerous. And they also are prone to violence. So they wouldn't care. And sometimes I really am afraid outside if some of those guys looks at me like this, I move in a different direction maybe just to avoid, you'd never know. Yeah, they are all around here. Or Linz, where the FPÖ is, this is the Austrian equivalent of our AfD, the very right-wing, almost fascist party. And they travel around, they have no jobs anyway, so rumors say they are offered, for instance, 70 euros to go there and beat this person up. They attack LGBT activists and everything which is somehow lefty.
I mean, that's the other canary in the coal mine that we're seeing. Look what's happening in Italy right now, where they're effectively banning anyone LGBT from being able to adopt. We're seeing these things happen. And it's scary. I will say, I was reading this and I wasn't worried for your safety. So I hope that you are taking precaution. But I will say too, I find it interesting because all of this is happening. And then you do court controversy a little. You use the term breeder privilege. I was like, well, I could see why people would get upset with that. So what is behind the more sort of bombastic and controversial terms that you tend to use?
Our local newspaper says that all the time, that I just love being provocative and provoking people. Yeah, maybe 1% of that is true. But I also think it's necessary, and I always do it in a friendly, humorous style, I'd say. I never offend anyone deliberately. This is rather well, not 100% a joke, of course, but rather a way of grabbing people's attention and saying, it might not be perfect, and not only your business if you have 5 kids, it affects the rest of the world. Maybe you should think about ecology, politics, etc. if you have 6 or 7 or whatever kids. I mostly talk about replacement level, more than replacement level families anyway. I never bother with those who have 1 or 2 kids. That's fine with me. That's okay, of course. But those really big families, like we have Ursula von der Leyen, you might know her, and she has 7 kids. And this is really, they also have their lifestyle going with that. They have private jets, etc. And their emissions, their carbon footprints, whoa, please. If everyone lived like that, the planet wouldn't exist anymore ecologically. So there might be a slight light criticism necessary, and that's what I want to convey by using a cool word which only exists in your language anyway. In German, we don't have a really proper equivalent. I've been searching for one, and I just say parents in German, so it's more boring in my mother tongue.
And I was like, oh, breeder is in here a lot.
but it's interesting you talk. So we also, there's a real, I mean, first of all, there's a problem with billionaires in general,
Yeah.
except I maintain Steven Spielberg and Taylor Swift are the only good billionaires. All the rest of them are terrible.
Okay.
We have a problem here as well with this small sect of Silicon Valley millionaires and billionaires who have decided that it's their job to have as many children as possible. And it would
Elon
stress
Musk.
me,
Or
right?
just
And you're
Elon
right.
Musk.
Also living these very carbon heavy lifestyles. And so
Mhm.
one of the main reasons that you give, that I think a lot of people give for not having children, is the fact that we are legitimately living in an age of climate change, right? Like we can all see it. It is no longer anything anyone can deny. And absolutely, every single time you have a child, you're bringing it, particularly for those of us in the developed world, and you point this out, that
Mhm.
it is, yeah. So she's showing us this great map that you can't see because you are listening in audio, but maybe I can get a copy to put in the show notes. But
Can describe it.
one of the things that I appreciate that you point out is that you are not talking about this very racist replacement theory idea. And that every time someone says to you, go tell people in Africa not to have so many children, you point out the difference between the carbon footprint of a child in Africa and a child in Germany or the Western world, right? And I appreciate it because that's such an important thing. And so every time, every time someone tells me they're having a child, I'm always just like, I always tell them, name the kid Max and teach them how to use a crossbow because that's the future they're going into. So can you talk a little bit about your climate reasons for not wanting to have children and what that looks like?
Actually, myself personally, I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to have one kid, never more than one anyway, but I was talking with my husband about maybe one kid, yes or no, when I was 30 something. And then I started to do all this research. And then I finally found this cool article. It was actually in The Guardian, and it said, want to fight climate change? Have fewer kids. And I was quite intrigued because nobody in Germany talks about this.
Mm-hmm.
And or Anglophone world, everyone talks about this, and this is really cool. And the headline is again, are you environmentally friendly? Canadian researchers have detailed the best lifestyle choices to reduce greenhouse gases. Savings per action in terms of carbon dioxide per person per year. This is from 2017 when I was 37. And then I said, oh, have one fewer child, 58.6. So this is really huge. And
Wow.
all the other things which are promoted in our media are, for instance, avoid one transatlantic flight, 1.6. Buy a more efficient car, 1.19. Buy green energy, 1.5. Even go vegan, 3.76. Upgrade light bulbs, 0.1. Eat less meat, 0.8. Wash clothes in cold water. And this is really marginal compared to one child in the Western industrialized world. I was shocked. And then I thought, well, let's spread the word. Maybe some others want to join me in my fight and contribute really significantly. And I always call it climate catastrophe. It's not climate change anymore. Although we and our right-wing persons I mentioned and described earlier, they are still climate change deniers, believe it or not. But yeah, well, okay. Maybe they are completely lost anyway. I will never get through with those guys. But there are some who are not that informed, but would be curious or open to suggestions like have one kid less, so to speak. If you plan 3, maybe just 2. And yeah, that's a great contribution and not that hard, actually, I think personally. Yeah, that was one of my main reasons. And I was also immensely shocked when the first normal journalists, not even right-wing ones, started to say to me, well, go to Africa and tell your thesis, those people, they have 5 or 6 kids. Yeah, well, a whole classroom of the average African child uses as much as your beloved one daughter or boy here in Germany. Ever thought about that? And then they are like insulted and offended at this crazy bitch. You wouldn't believe it, really. I couldn't believe it. I'm now used to that because I have been doing this for 5 years meanwhile, and I will never stop because, as I said, we have climate catastrophe, and it's really high time that even more people, I mean, there are some successes. People have joined in. I've read about more women and men, or also readers who wrote to me, and I'm always quite happy about those guys. So please write to me, anyone out there. Yeah. And they say, okay, she's right, and we do this too, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. There are more reasons to go child-free anyway. Maybe we can talk about those as well later on. But this is really one of the biggest, and why not do that? Why leave out this biggest possible, individually possible solutions? They say, we have to tell the factories to somehow cut down on their emissions. Well, if we need all the things those factories produce, some of our journalists don't know the IPAD formula, which is impact always consists of population, affluence, and technology. This is simple. Or, for instance, Earth Overshoot Day, that was on May the 2nd in Germany. And where do the resources for the 2/3 rest of the year come from? Of course, the global south and animals who go extinct. But who needs those? This offends me. Sorry, I always get carried away because
it's so right in front of us. And I find it interesting because even if you look at, for instance, like the UN climate change goals and all of these sort of different lofty goals, they never mention not having children. And it's very obvious that if humans are causing climate change, then more humans are going to cause more climate change. So it seems clear that that should be towards the top of the list. And again, you're right. This is also, it's something, and not just with children, but in so many ways that those of us who are in the Western developed world just don't want to take responsibility for, or don't know how, right? Like, obviously, we are massive consumers in the US and we know it, but it is like we have no concept of how to stop doing that, right? Like it's such a part of our lives that there isn't really a way. I'm trying to think of even how we're never going to be able to stop going to Target or driving our cars, right? So to me, the answer is like, fine, if we're going to like consume this much, and I know we're not all going to move to communes, right? And like start making our own clothes. Like we're just not. So let's at least have fewer consumers.
Yeah, right.
Because we just built this life, and we can't ever go back to the indigenous way of life that we should have been living. We just can't. And so the fact that that is something that we're not talking about, even when we're talking about everything else. I know anyone listening to this podcast will probably be tired of me talking about this. I don't know if this came out of Germany, but on Apple TV, David Attenborough, a year after COVID, did this really incredible documentary called, I think, the Year the Earth Stopped. And it showed how after just 1 year of human beings staying inside, nature started to heal itself. And came out, and the pollution in the most heavily polluted parts of India cleared within weeks, right? Like we were talking about, like the Hudson River was clean, which has never happened since the dawn of time, right? And like it just was, to me, I watched that and it was just such a testament to the fact that we are the problems, and like if there were just fewer of us, everything else would be okay. And we would be better off because we wouldn't have the pollution and all these other things.
That as well. The quality of life would be better for all of us. But nobody cares. They just want more and more and more. Quality, only quantity is what counts. And they really are so hypocritical here as well. They keep saying and writing in our newspapers especially, well, we save one straw and we don't use this plastic bag now. And then, oh, great, we are so great. We saved the world by reducing plastic. Whom are you kidding?
I was in New York recently, and it was over a year ago, I will say, because I went to Starbucks, and I know we've been boycotting Starbucks for a while. It was before the boycott, but I went to Starbucks, and I was at some event like near Times Square, which is, even now, it's better than it used to be, but it's still just one of the dirtiest places on the planet. And I asked for a stopper for my cup, and the barista acted like I had asked him to slaughter a whale. Like he was, we don't use stoppers. They're so bad for the environment. And I was like, you're in Times Square. This is the filthiest place on the planet. Right? It was like the little things that we obsess over, like papers. The only thing I've ever agreed with Donald Trump on is he once tweeted these liberal paper straws don't work. And you know what? He's right. These liberal paper straws do not work. And yet we insist on doing all of these other things. But moving off from the environment, you know, you're in the book, and everyone, obviously it'll be linked in the show notes. It's on Amazon. It's fantastic. It's also very short and easy to read, which was great. I sort of plowed through it. You do talk about some of your other main reasons for choosing to be child free, and also sort of what the reactions have been. So can you go through some of your other top reasons?
Yeah, my second, or is it they swap all the time. Ecology and feminism is 50-50, I'd say, and all the other reasons. And I have a new German book, by the way. I'm looking for an editor in the English-speaking world, if anyone is listening. And this is called, Kinder frei, alle Länder vereinigt euch, which would translate roughly as Non-Breeders Unite. And again, this cool title, my friend from Massachusetts came up with that.
Nice.
Yeah, and this features me, Karl Marx, and Shulamit Firestone. And Shulamit Firestone is one of the greatest feminists, and I love the dialectic of sex. And I mean, she writes in 1970, more than 50 years ago, that the heart of women's oppression is her childbearing and child-rearing role. So that should tell us something. And she says pregnancy is harmful to a woman's body. Well, of course it is. And it still is. I have a pen friend in France who almost died when she gave birth. And 36 women per year, for instance, die giving birth in Germany now, not in India 500 years ago. This is what actually does happen. And there are such negative consequences to the female body that I also thought, well, why inflict this upon me only to have an ego extension, as Shulamit Firestone also writes, or another consumer, another soldier, another person being a wage slave, whatever you might say. No, this doesn't make sense at all. And it's the biggest favor you can do to patriarchy, because they want us to have kids in order to be at home. This also reminds me of the 1930s in Germany. We had this mother cross ideology. Women staying at home in the kitchen, cleaning and caring for the kids, going to church, and that's it. I don't want to go back there. Only our right-wing parties want that. They have the same program for women. Then they are somehow usefully occupied and don't get strange ideas like overthrowing patriarchy or whatever into their head. So, and Simone de Beauvoir, whom I also admire greatly, she also says, well, of course, a true feminist doesn't give birth. This is like giving up, giving in. Yeah, and this resonates with me. And I thought, well, yeah, those women are right. Or Gloria Steinem, who said, when the pill came along, we were able to give birth to ourselves. And this is such a nice thing. I love that. And yeah, that's completely me. So I don't know why I even wondered several years ago, should I maybe have one kid? This is, of course, pressure from society all around me, and our pronatalist pressure upon women everywhere.
And I think that's really such a key, is that so many women, and it's been interesting talking to so many women as I've started this podcast, for so many women, they felt so much pressure that they never really knew if they were making that decision for themselves. And particularly where you talk about, there's a big difference between having like one child, maybe two children, and having a lot of children, right? Because there's also a ton of pressure on women who only have one kid for like, when are you having the next one? Why aren't you having more? And of course, that puts more pressure on her when it comes to a career and a life and et cetera. And I think that it's so clear when we're thinking about feminism that the more children that a woman has, the earlier she has them, or the more she doesn't know if she wants them, the more that she then is not becoming whoever she can be. And you can totally be. I was raised by a lot of very feminist, very well-educated women, but they were very well educated, right? My great-grandmother and my grandmother had a master's degree and a whole career before she had kids. And so she was able to fully become who she was and didn't give up her career when she had children, and knows to the second, the minute the pill became legal, because she kept getting pregnant until finally there was the pill and she got on it immediately, right? But the fact that she was able, even as a Black woman in the South who grew up in segregated schools, to go to college, to go to graduate school, to have a career, meant that she lived this really, and she's still alive, she's 93 now, but this very, full life. And she owned a house on her own and did all of these things. But that's where, and one of the things as we talk about Russia, we can see where they're going because they're starting to talk really negatively about women's education, right? Mm-hmm. And they brought back the Soviet, what do they call it? The Golden Mother or something award, that if you have 10 children, then you get 1 million rubles, which is like 13,000. It's not enough for 10 children, right? But they're really trying to move against women's education because those things come together. And we see that too in developing countries. The more you educate, the fewer children they have, and then they're able to, be more feminist and think about smashing the patriarchy. And so it's less women never having children and more, is this a thing you are able to make a decision about on your own and do while fulfilling everything you want to fulfill about your lives? And are we living in a society that's making that possible for every woman?
For instance, in Hungary as well, this Orban, I hate him so much, and he does this for years. Meanwhile, he gives a van to those families who have 4 kids or more.
Yeah.
Things like that. And, I can't believe this. And then I read, I know a person personally from Great Britain, and he said he moved here to Germany, work-related, and he has 2 kids. And then he said, suddenly I get so much child benefit here for my 2 kids. I got less for the second kid in the UK. And I thought, how cool. They are the progressive and cool ones, not we. We encourage those.
I didn't know that. And one of the things that we're really starting to talk more about here in the States, where 20% of the adult population is child-free, and growing. And so as we're becoming a bigger and bigger block, we're talking about you get, I don't think it's anyone who's saying parents shouldn't get credits for having children, that we shouldn't have, be paying for childcare, things like that, because it's really hard and expensive to have kids. But also that we need support for people who don't have kids, and perhaps incentives, because the UN just came out with another report a few days ago that 0 countries have made any progress on climate change. Of all the countries have made it, right? And so how are we thinking about these different economic incentives? And that there are a lot of incentives, so I want to keep going with your reasons, but I just find that when we're talking about women and women being able to live the lives they want, and that there's still so many women all over the world in developed countries who don't feel that they can. We really have to think about what are our pronatal policies doing to encourage that.
Yeah, that's why I also attack the church all the time, because they want actually no progress at all, especially in the global south. They still encourage this, have your 8 kids, don't get any education. Who needs that? And this is really horrible, because we need female empowerment, and this can only work via education, of course. And usually the more educated women are, the less children they want. Surprise, who would have guessed that? And concerning the workplace, I often read statistics or articles where people tell the others they are discriminated against because they are child-free, especially the women more than the men. For instance, they get shifts nobody else wants. They have to be here on Christmas, etc. And when all the others take off, and everyone else can say, I want holidays or vacations there, then and then. And you can choose later on. You don't have anyone anyway, so you're not important. And at least that has to stop.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. Well, it's so two previous guests on this show were the authors of this book, Glass Walls. And it's all about the gender bias barriers that women face in the workplace. And this is another thing. And I constantly have this moment where I'm like, did I get in a time machine and go back to 1950? Because this book was published in 2023. And they talk about, and they call it the maternal wall. And they say women, whether they have children or not, hit a maternal wall because you're discriminated for having children or for not having children. And they lay out a lot of those examples, which everybody, globally talks about. Either I have children, so I'm being discriminated against this way, or I don't have children, I'm being discriminated against this way. And it's always women. know?
Yeah.
And our time doesn't matter as much, our money doesn't matter as much, because I was, single women, clearly we don't have to pay rent or utilities. So all of our money is just fun money. So you don't pay us equally, right? And you face all these barriers. So you're our book machine. I had one book come out a year ago, and I'm like trying to get together the proposal for the next one. And you put out like 5 books, so you're like a book a year. You're like Stephen King for child-free women. You're putting out all of these great writings. You're doing a lot. You're the face of the child-free movement in Germany. What are your goals for where this movement goes, both in Germany and globally?
Right now, thanks for all the praise, but right now I'm not writing a new book. I take a break from book writing because I got this column in Switzerland 5 months ago, and this keeps me occupied as well. And for instance, they call me voices, one of the voices, they call this project Voices of Switzerland, and so I'm a voice of Switzerland, although I'm just a German voice, but no. And I want more female and also male, why not? Sometimes this is also a problem, is it a problem or a phenomenon? Mostly women talk about the child-free movement. More men should come forward as well. They are the minority there and say, I'm child-free too, and due to those reasons, blah, blah, and blah. And yeah, so I want more people who out themselves. It's so incredible that we still have to out ourselves, at least here in Germany, because everyone assumes, oh, poor you couldn't have kids. Oh, I'm so sorry. Have you tried IVF? Well, no, sorry. Get this. I didn't want to. Oh, please get away from me. You are the devil. So this is really incredible. We still have this mentality here. So, and I can't say get rid of this mentality because it's coming back in full force, as I described with those right-wingers. And especially in Bavaria, we have always had this Christian social union, as they call themselves. They have been ruling here like forever. And especially our Prime Minister Söder, who is really a horrible guy. I hate him deeply. I always criticize him because he supports IVF for Bavarian couples heavily, 1,000 euro per couple. And I think so much money so that they can try to have a Bavarian kid. We have full homes of kids who are already existing and who would love to be adopted. What about those kids? Or kids in the global south or wherever? We could help existing kids with that money so much. So this makes me really angry. No, he needs more Bavarian kids because this is quite important. And he's not even AfD, a really right-wing party. I find this right-wing enough, frankly speaking, but okay. And where was I heading at?
Where you want it to go.
Yeah, and I can't believe that. Yeah, I'm not sure if I ever have a real success, but maybe in the more progressive parts of Germany. We have lots of people like me in Berlin or Hamburg, the big cities. They are completely on board. Or some of the Greens, some lefties, of course, and yeah. The right part, I guess I never get through to those guys anyway. So, and it's really shocking that people don't go voting enough. For instance, in Italy, it was only 50-something% who voted. All the other lazy guys stayed at home, and now they have Meloni. They could have avoided that. So please, I hope more people, or in 1 week, I wrote about Kamala Harris and support her so much, and I really hope and pray 24/7 that she will succeed. And those things are quite important, and I hope that more people wake up. All this indifference is really so detrimental. This is really the biggest problem, I think. This majority of I don't care, now I have my dinner, I pick up my kids and my part-time job goes well. So anything we could do or care about, I think everything is fine. Those are also part of the problem. And yeah, hopefully they will wake up. And it shouldn't be too late then. Some people say it's too late anyway and the planet is burning. But yeah, I try to keep some optimism nevertheless.
Well, it's clear that you are an example for German women who are or want to be, or are child-free, maybe young women who think they want to be. It's clear that they don't have enough examples. And so it's amazing that they have you and that you are so visible and so brave, because if there's one thing that I have learned from talking to so many women is that so many women never knew that it was even a choice. And you're showing them that it's a choice and that you can be fun and fabulous and have a great life without children. And that in itself is huge. So you're doing amazing work.
Thank you. And really, I'm so proud and happy. One woman from the countryside wrote to me and said, my book saved her life because she was pondering suicide because it was unthinkable in the village not to have kids.
Wow.
And then, and this is 20 something. I think it was 2 years ago when she wrote to me, I saved her life. But isn't that incredible that this is still our reality? Yeah. This is some kilometers from here, and she considered suicide because nobody understood her. Her own mother said, no, you must have kids. Everyone said, you must have kids. If you don't want kids, you're not normal.
That's so unfortunate for her. I hope she moves to a city. Different perspectives, but no, you're doing amazing work. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been a great conversation, and it's so fun for me to be able to have people from so many different countries because there are things that are similar, and then there are just so many perspectives that are so different about this one issue, which somehow shockingly is still an issue everywhere. So thank you.
Yeah. If I may add one last sentence, because several times I already got, we thought Germany was so progressive. Also, my friend from Massachusetts said, well, I'm shocked. Really? Is it that horrible in Germany? We thought you're so progressive and way ahead in everything. No, not concerning pronatalism. Everyone should know that. No, maybe we are progressive in some other parts of life, but not in this respect.
Yeah. Wow.
Sorry to keep you.
No, it's good. And it's good for us to remember, and I think we're seeing this around the world, we can lose that progressive progress if we don't keep fighting for it.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Verena. It's been great having you.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and of course, leave a review. Until next week, here's hoping you find joy in your solo life.